Well, that's what it's about after all, money. Thank you for tuning in to this Tuesday, November 17th, Organic News. And I am Catherine Waters, Cat Waters on Facebook, Waters with two T's, April Waters on YouTube, and Cat W44 on Twitter. And I want to encourage everyone to please visit my YouTube channel, April Waters with two T's, and please support independent journalism because we need it, or else everything is corporate owned and propagandized. So I'm going to get right to the first guest is WYLIE STECKLOW, the lawyer for Reverend William Talen, also known as Reverend Billy, who's filing a lawsuit against the Metropolitan Transit Authority for violation of constitutional rights, false arrest, and defamation. Welcome to Organic News on Awake Radio, WYLIE STECKLOW.
Thanks so much, Kat. Really nice to be here on the internet with you.
Yeah, I was trying to get Reverend Billy on himself, like, for a while. He was almost going to be on once, but he's, like, traveling all over the place, going, right outside of Monsanto. He does a lot of protesting against Monsanto. The bees, I've been to many of his events, and he's very passionate, but he's not a real reverend, right? It's just theater. It's just performing art, right?
I would challenge anyone to uncover his non-reverendness. Every time I see him and speak to him, he certainly seems to be Reverend Billy and not William Talen. But it's interesting that you bring up the Monsanto headquarters action. That was virtually 1 year ago. It was on Thanksgiving of last year. And Monsanto is located just a couple miles from Ferguson, Missouri. So it was actually an interesting time. And I went with Reverend Billy and the choir to Ferguson and to Monsanto last Thanksgiving. And we did a organic Thanksgiving on Monsanto's lawn, on their headquarters lawn. And we've learned since then that a lot of, or not a lot, but some of their employees who work at their headquarters, because of that protest and other ones that seem to be happening consistently at the footstep of Monsanto, that some of these employees actually quit. They learned more about what their product was and decided they couldn't work that way anymore and support that. So really interesting stuff going on. This past Sunday, I actually saw Reverend Billy and the choir at Joe's Pub. They're doing residencies there every Sunday, and that was really fun and interesting and really uplifting. They had the AIM protesters, those guys who got arrested last week, and right after they were arrested, Governor Cuomo signed into legislation saying they're not going to use that area for pipelines. And so he had the 9 individuals who were arrested in the audience, and they came up on stage and got fainted. And it's really, for activists, it's difficult because it's so rare to get these victories, and you really need to celebrate it and get together and feel good. So one great thing that Reverend Billy and the choir always do is recognize the activists who are putting themselves on the line, bring them in, celebrate them, and celebrate activism in general. So the Joe's Pub shows are just a really great, energizing moment for activists.
Yeah, I've been to the Joe's Pub shows in the last year. I forget exactly. I think it must have been last year. They're very exciting. And also, there was a Mardi Gras party that Reverend Billy was at, and the choir and everything. I forget exactly when that was. I think it was in the...
That was February 26th of last year. That's actually an event I organized and produced.
Was it?
It's a fundraiser, yes. We've been doing this since 2007 in response to Hurricane Katrina. Okay. We organized a fundraiser in New York and sent money down to New Orleans musicians, Hurricane Relief Funds, and some other charities. And we continue to do that event every year. It's going to be February 27th this year. It's a Friday. It's going to be at Angel Orange Foundation on the Lower East Side. Reverend Billy and the choir are going to be back, and some other bands. It's really, a fantastic time. And we raise money. We pretty much do the best Mardi Gras party in New York City, and then donate all the funds to charity. So it's really a great night. And if you were there last year, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And I hope you'll come back this year.
I have a couple of the masks that were left on the table because I thought they were really nice.
Yeah, They were nice. It's such a great time. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Okay, sure. I also, because you mentioned Governor Cuomo as the one who brought the protesters up on stage.
No, it was Reverend Billy who brought them on stage. It was Governor Cuomo who signed the end of the legislation that pretty much validated the activist conduct and what they have been doing.
Okay, so he deserves a recognition for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are very easy to criticize all the politicians out there, but when they actually do the right thing, even if it's for the wrong reasons, I think we've got to celebrate that.
Right. Okay, so then let's get to the, you're representing Reverend Billy in a lawsuit against the MTA because it was in the, was it Grand Central Station?
That's correct.
Yeah. Right.
You know, back in January of last year, Reverend Billy was invited to Grand Central Terminal by some organizers of a die-in there. It was a 24-hour protest, obviously First Amendment activity. It was organized by, I think it was Carry the Signs was the name of the group, which is, you know, inspired in part of the Black Lives Matter movement. And these were really well-done signs that had the names of, I think, 162 individuals who had either been killed or brutalized by the police department. And that during the 24 hours, each one of these people, somebody would announce the name of the individual on the sign, and then through a human mic check, explain the story of what happened. So people would know that these were more than just names on signs. These were stories. These were things that happened. These are reasons why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important. And Reverend Billy was invited there to do a little bit of a sermon. It was probably about the 18th or 19th hour of the 24-hour vigil, and he was doing things that were no different than anybody else had been doing. But lo and behold, when he started speaking and started pointing at the numbers of police present, they decided that that was too much and they had to come in and shut it down. And so they not only shut it down, but then they arrested Billy for no reason whatsoever. He had done nothing wrong. He was clearly just exercising First Amendment rights. And not only did they arrest him, but their public spokespeople issued statements to the press alleging that Billy attacked the police in some fashion.
Well, they always have to do that. They always have to say, oh, they had a gun, oh, they had a knife, oh, I feared for my life.
I mean, but you've got to recognize, because they certainly did not, the Grand Central and the MTA did not, you've got to recognize Reverend Billy has been doing this for a very long time. He's extremely well trained in peaceful civil disobedience, and he's well trained in how to interact with police. Now, this was protest. It was not civil disobedience. But when the police start to interact with him, he knows not to get, you know, to let his body be loose, to let his hands be loose, let his muscles be loose, not to get into any sort of confrontation, and yet they still arrest him. And this is, you know, I've been representing Billy, I'll say it's been my honor and privilege to be his counsel for about 10 years now.
Wow.
And, you know, this is not the first time he seems to be arrested for no legitimate reason other than, you know, the term I use is he's low-hanging fruit to the police.
Yep.
You know, he's somebody they've seen around. He's somebody who's been through the system. He's somebody dressed as a preacher and somebody who's leading a call and response type of mic check. And so he gets arrested pretty much out of crowds for no legitimate reason. And in this situation, the MTA and the inspector that arrested him had no legitimate reason to do so.
Well,
and so the case, the charges themselves were dismissed by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And Reverend Billy actually took a stand. They obviously offered him an ACD and adjournment in contemplation of dismissal, like they offer virtually everybody who gets improperly arrested at protests. But Reverend Billy this time said no, he would not take the ACD, and we had to return to court a number of times, and we had multiple conversations with members of the District Attorney's Office, and eventually they finally agreed to dismiss the charges.
And so ACD, what is that?
That stands for adjournment in contemplation of dismissal. I'm sorry for not explaining that.
Okay.
So that's offered almost uniformly when people are arrested during protests, and the District Attorney's Office says, well, it's sort of like a dismissal. And they're accurate. That is sort of like a dismissal, but it also, in some ways, tries to distinguish from an outright dismissal, from what the DA office does when they don't want to prosecute at all. for an arrest that's been made, they'll do something called decline to prosecute. And so in this situation, they started the process, they offered this adjournment in contemplation of dismissal, and Billy said no to that and fought the charges and fought them sufficiently to the point where the DA's office said, okay, enough, we're going to drop the charges completely.
Because that's right, like that's what they do. They make the person who's been falsely arrested, kind of take whatever variations, of the charges as if they're still guilty in some way. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, they just don't seem to really want to dismiss things completely.
Right.
They want to sort of do a give and take. And there are times where, where they'll actually hear you out, where they'll actually listen to you about getting an outright dismissal. But 9 times out of 10, my experience is, even when they see straight up that this is not a real case, that there's video and there's something, if they've already arraigned the defendant and they've already started the process, they will not dismiss. They'll only grant this ACD. And so in this situation, Billy was just sick and tired of getting these ACDs when he had done nothing wrong.
Right.
In Occupy Wall Street criminal cases, it was actually different. It was very interesting during those times. In my office, we were honored then to represent over 200 individuals pro bono who were arrested during Occupy. And we saw then that we actually had video showing that the police were lying in the criminal complaints against individuals, that the DAs assigned would actually look at those video, and if they agreed, they would actually dismiss. Not just ACD, not just adjourning contemplation dismissal, but they would actually dismiss cases. But that was really just that one situation of Occupy Wall Street. Since then, we've really had to go to the mat to get outright dismissals. It's a lot easier. It takes a lot less time, a lot less court appearances to simply take the ACD usually.
So then, my question is, how come it doesn't get, turned around that the officers actually get in trouble for lying?
There'd be nothing greater to understand than how to get an officer in trouble for lying on official paperwork.
That sounds outrageous.
I'll give you an example. And during the Occupy Wall Street time, again, we had one client who, on November 17th, 2011, 2 days after the eviction, the midnight raid that evicted people from Zuccotti Park, and there was a day of action going on in the downtown area, I have a client who was actually at Amalgamated Bank on Lower Broadway on behalf of Occupy, not protesting, not out in the street, not carrying signs, but simply trying to do the work he was volunteering to do for Occupy as part of their finance team. And as he was in the bank, and there's a lot of bank video of all of this, because it's the bank, so there's video of everything going on inside the bank, 8 or 9 different video cameras. While he was inside the bank, somebody gets arrested right outside the door. So he does what any good activist does. He puts his head out the door and goes, "What's your name? What's your name?" With that, the police come barreling through the bank and arrest this guy, and then allege in a criminal complaint that he was in the middle of the street with 50 people blocking traffic. So we're like, okay, this is great. We've got video. We take the video down to the DA's office. They look at it and they go, "Of course we're going to dismiss this. This isn't true." I'm like, great, so you're going to prosecute the cop for lying. Well, that's not really what we do in this office. And so I'm okay, we'll file something with the CCRB. So we file something with CCRB showing the video, showing the criminal complaints, how they're lying to have our client prosecuted. And the CCRB decides that it's not in their purview. And they send it to the precinct of the officer who did this. And so now my client had met with the DA, had met with CCRB, and now the officer's supervisor wants him to come and speak to him. And that's when I said, no, that's outrageous. You already have the story twice. You don't need my guy's story. Go speak to your person. Well, we're not going to interview her. We're not going to do anything to this officer unless you come down and speak to us. So it was a joke. And this was, it's rare to have the lies so dead to rights, to have video showing they're lying. And yet we had it, and there's nothing done. So the DA's office, and I won't say it's every DA's office, but certainly the ones that I've dealt with in Manhattan have not been at all interested in prosecuting police for lying in criminal complaints. However, we have a new DA in town over in Brooklyn, in Kings County, And DA Ken Thompson has been impressing a lot of people on his ability to actually, speak truth and take care of business as it's supposed to be done. And so I wouldn't be surprised if an officer lies in official paperwork in the DA's office in Brooklyn that he'll get some comeuppance there. It hasn't happened yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen.
Because
just like you say, we got to give credit when credit's due. I applaud DA Ken Thompson out of Brooklyn.
DA Ken Thompson. I mean, because, like what you're describing, I mean, it's all just like so ridiculous to me. I mean, it's so ridiculous sounding because, I mean, it's so, like, obviously, I mean, I don't know, ridiculous that, these cops can just blatantly, get away with just, lying and just completely fabricating. Of course, when there's cameras everywhere, and when it's clearly shown that they are lying, like while they're making somebody else. I mean, like they can like easily send someone else to jail, like an innocent person to jail at the drop of a hat, and yet when it shows that they're clearly lying and they're the guilty party, like nothing can be done. It's like the system isn't set up. It's only set up to, of course, make the innocent public the guilty one.
Yep.
But not.
No, and there's so little accountability that it doesn't stop. Anytime you watch some of the video of the protest and the heavy-handedness of the police response, it just blows my mind when you think that the people that are being harmed here, the heavy-handed, people who are being. The heavy hands are being used against are on the street just protesting. They're not committing crimes.
Exactly.
They're not out there. They're not out there being violent. They are protesting because that's how our country was set up. How you're supposed to bring about change. You're supposed to go to the street. You're supposed to, talk loudly and make announcements and make people listen to you. And the violent nature of the response is just astonishing. And you get almost numb to it. I mean, we had an experience with one of our Occupy civil cases. After we got the criminal charges dismissed, we sued, and this involved an individual who was a video streamer who was tackled and thrown to the ground by the number one police officer in the island of Manhattan, is Thomas Purtell, who was the head of the Manhattan borough as a police officer. And he physically tackles our guy and throws him to the ground. And, it's just astonishing that when this stuff goes down, that there is no response. The violent nature of it is just so uncalled for. But when we took that one to court and we were showing the video to the judge and the judge's law clerk, I could see on their faces how surprised they were with the violent nature. And for us, it's so second nature. We see it so much, we get numb to it. So it was a good sort of moment for me to see how this stuff still can, bring about a response to people who aren't so numb to it, so that it is really wrong and it shouldn't be happening.
I get like really, this drives me crazy. I have to talk about my favorite quote by James Madison because I feel like it's just such an important quote. It says, "I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by those in power, by slow and gradual encroachments, than by sudden and violent usurpations." And I used to be an EMT for the fire department. I used to do EMS in the 90s up until, like the early 2000s. And I said the same thing before I saw that James Madison quote, because you can see like just, no one is responding to this like slow and gradual deterioration. People just always pay attention to the sudden and the violent. And I feel like, things have just deteriorated so much, and people are feeling it, people are standing up, they're protesting now, but, and it's going to be like so much harder because the powers that be are used to having like more than their share. The people got too used to having less and not having any rights. and now trying to, even the scale and tip the scale back towards the level of the people, right? Like the people are being met with, like what's rightfully theirs that they want to use now, they're being treated like, oh, well, you weren't using it all along. Like, we've been using it against you. And it is going to take like that much more work. And, maybe we can, can do what you guys did in front of Monsanto, like get some people to quit,
Yeah.
But anyway, there's, Billy, Talen is seeking damages related to 13 claims, including violation of his First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights. Can you talk about each one of those?
Not sure how specific I can go into all of those claims, but, I'll talk about, obviously, we believe he was unlawfully arrested. We believe that he was arrested in violation of his First Amendment rights of free speech and public association. We believe that the Grand Central MTA Police Department, and we've learned that the MTA Police Department is trained at the NYPD Academy, so they have the same training. We filed a class action on behalf of 200 Occupy Wall Street individuals arrested on the 1-year anniversary. And in that class action we filed, we claim that the NYPD did not properly train its police force in First Amendment policing. Since the MTA Police Department received the same training as the NYPD, it's my belief that Reverend Billy's arrest is due in part to this failure of training at the Academy, but this failure of training is obviously related to the MTA Police Departments at the same NYPD Academy. We also have claims because of the statements made by the spokespeople for MTA. They stated, as Reverend Billy was in jail, being processed, going through the system, they published in newspapers, or they caused to be published in newspapers, things that are false in my opinion. False statements in my opinion that said Reverend Billy put his hands on these officers.
Right.
These officers need to be protected from people like Reverend Billy, that Reverend Billy attacked these police officers. And when you have an individual like Reverend Billy who's out in the streets every day, leading groups of activists, going and interacting with police regularly, and let's put it into context. This protest of January 2015 was less than 3 weeks after Officers Liu and Ramos were, unfortunately murdered in Brooklyn. And so when these individuals, when MTA's spokespeople are putting these false statements out that Reverend Billy is somehow violent against police, within a couple of weeks when these other officers were actually killed in their line of duty, it really places a bullseye in some way on Reverend Billy's back. He's out there dealing with police all the time. You cannot place this bullseye on him. He's a peaceful activist. He is a good leader of activism, and he really shouldn't be put in this position. Luckily, he hasn't been harmed physically by this. In other words, he hasn't had somebody shoot him. He hasn't had somebody break his arm. He hasn't been physically attacked by the police. But the emotional distress that he and his family went through, knowing that he was walking around every day with this bullseye in his back, it's traumatic, and it really is uncalled for, and there was no reason for the MTA to do that. I mean, that was clearly a spin doctor situation, and they just chose to, again, let's go after the low-hanging fruit. Let's go after Reverend Billy.
Right.
On top of that, the Intercept did a great story a couple months ago about how the MTA and the NYPD were tracking and monitoring activists involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. And we've learned from the discovery, from the FOIA that's come from that among the emails out there that were tracking individuals is an email tracking Reverend Billy, saying that, hey, Reverend Billy is back at the Grand Central. This is after his arrest, a month or so after. He's back at Grand Central. He got himself arrested last time he was here. So clearly they were tracking and monitoring him, and we want to learn how much of this was related to his arrest. Were they tracking and monitoring the day of his arrest? Did they see him come in? Were they talking about having him arrested? We don't know these things. But this is why you should be tracking and monitoring First Amendment activity. This is free speech.
Yep.
You know, and our Constitution guarantees the right to free speech, and the law guarantees that free speech activity should not be tracked or monitored unless there's criminal activity.
Exactly.
And there was no criminal activity here.
I mean, you know, well, what with Edward Snowden revealing the surveillance of the NSA, I mean, you know, what has that even done? I mean, what? I mean, it's just it continues. I mean, and they're just going to be, you know, the system, the powers that be, are going to just be using now this attack in Paris that the United States basically created ISIS and ISIL and Al Qaeda, you know, just so they can use that as an excuse to take everybody's rights away. Like that's the danger in all of this stuff. With, you know, with the attacks on Paris and the, you know, the announcements in the subway that I have to listen to every day about, oh, you know, the police have a right to check your bags and containers and all that stuff. And every time I hear that announcement on the subway, I say out loud, not without a warrant, or, you know, it's against, I mean, I don't care if people look at me. I don't care if they think I'm weird. I don't care. I say it out loud. I mean, not like I'm not screaming it. I say it, you know, just sort of maybe like, you know, at a medium tone. I mean, just maybe so a couple of people around me can hear it. I mean,
Right.
you know, really, I mean, because if you know, this system's just going to wear people down until they're just completely like helpless and dependent. You know, nobody.
And I think you're exactly right. I mean, it goes back to that James Madison quote, and that's exactly the world we're living in now. It's not about one large move towards Big Brother.
Right.
It's all these little moves, all these little moves, all these little moves, both by the government and by corporations. And we're certainly, you know, a lot closer to 1984 than I think any of us believed we would be when we were living in 1984.
I mean, yeah, we're pretty much kind of out of time, but I just, you know, I've never been a political person, an economic person. Like in my entire life, I was a health person. I studied, I was a psych major. I studied a lot of, you know, because I felt early on that mental health was extremely important. It was like the most important thing was mental health. You know, fitness. I was always trying to get people to be physically and mentally and spiritually fit. And now it's even more scary of how, you know, I mean, people don't exercise, literally, like, not just physical fitness, but their rights, you know, like, they, you know, people need to occupy themselves, and really, I mean, it's scary that, you know, people don't use, you know, half of what they're capable of.
Yeah, and, you know, I think that's why we give I give a lot of kudos and passing it back and credit and pro bono work to those people who are out in the street.
Yeah.
Who have the energy and the excitement and interest to actually, you know, do direct action and try and bring change to our country, because we need it. We all know that. We all recognize it, but a lot of people are too dedicated to the almighty dollar.
Yeah.
And so those who are not, those who are dedicated to trying to bring about a better world, I applaud them and I do my best to support them.
Well, I know who I'm calling when I get arrested. Thank you very much, WYLIE STECKLOW of, what is it,
Sure thing.
STECKLOW and Thompson Law Office.
STECKLOW and Thompson. Our website is lawyersfortherestofus.com.
LawyersForTheRestOfUs.com.
And let me just do a plug for the Mardi Gras party. It's fatfriday.nyc. It's going to be February 27th in Angel Orangestown. It's going to be a great time, and I hope to see you there this year, Kat. And now you know me, so you'll come up and say hi.
I definitely will.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on. It was great fun.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Okay, good night.